Greetings, citizens of the world. What is freedom of speech and why is it relevant to society? Most people respond that freedom of speech is the right to say whatever you want or to voice your own opinion. While this makes all of you feel better knowing you won't be murdered by your government for speaking your mind, this is just a minor point in its relevancy to society. Few people realize that actions are really what enables society to progress through freedom of speech. MLK's "I Have a Dream" speech was not nearly as important as the simple act of a black man. In those times, walking up to the podium to speak for the oppressed. Freedom of speech is changing your online habits to avoid NSA spying. Freedom of speech is all of the small choices you make daily that you don't even think about. In the age of the internet, people still fail to realize that real life and internet, while connected, are not one and the same. On the internet you are given the choice to choose how you represent yourself. In real life you are represented by the way you look, by the color of your skin, by the clothes you wear, by your accent, by your gender and many other arbitrary things. On the internet none of these things matter.
So as you see in the video, one of the most important quotes that we found was that on the internet you are given the choice to choose how you represent yourself. In real life, you are represented by the way you look, by the color of your skin, by the clothes you wear, by your accent, by your gender, and many other arbitrary things. On the internet, none of these things matter.
And we thought that was really important because the internet provides you with a buffer that the real world wouldn't have. You are able to hide behind the screen and hide behind the internet, which is rare and very new development. And other people don't have the ability to judge your character, judge your clothes, judge your appearance, like the quote that Julia just said, as easily, and it's not as accessible of an option.
And one of the important questions that we think this brings up is, does this cause us to treat the people of the internet differently than we would in person? That are our reactions different to things on the internet than if, let's say, like Noah said it to me face to face?
And that kind of brings up a bigger question of whether or not technology has obviously in some lights improved the way we live, but it has also changed the way we live quite dramatically. And some people might say it actually complicated the way we live. And it has given a very complex light to the rules we live under and how they abide with technology and means of technology and social media. So particularly, it has complicated the way citizens of the USA understand the freedom of speech clause. So I'm going to read that. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
So this really forces us to look at the First Amendment in the U.S. Constitution. So if you look closely, it says that no law representing an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise theory of abridging the freedom of speech. So this is saying that there's nothing prohibiting our freedom of speech, and that we live in an unfiltered country so that whatever we say, there is no after effect. But the biggest question that we're facing is, does this apply to technology as well?
And that's a very valid question because there's nothing clarifying that question and answering that question. We don't know whether or not technology follows the same rules as all these other aspects of our daily life. Is everything said online a manifestation of freedom of speech? That's another question that comes up. And does the line between freedom of speech and threatening language come down to language standards? And now we're going to see a little bit of that in this video.
Anthony Alonis has already been to prison for what he posted on Facebook. The aspiring rapper who wanted to be like Eminem talked about wanting to kill his ex-wife, writing, quote, "I'm not going to rest until your body is a mess, soaked in blood and dying from all the little cuts." Another post said, "Enough elementary schools in a 10-mile radius to initiate the most heinous school shooting ever imagined." Alonis' attorney says the posts were rap lyrics and never meant to be taken seriously.
So after all the court hearings happened and after all the governmental involvement was done or was getting processed and the Supreme Court was processing the case, Anthony Alonis continued to post and to continue to comment on the situation.
Some of the Facebook posts that he wrote were, "Fold up your protective order and put it in your pocket. Is it thick enough to stop a bullet?" Another one was, "Did you know that it's illegal for me to say I want to kill my wife? It's illegal. It's indirect criminal contempt. It's only one of the sentences that I'm not allowed to say. Art is about pushing limits. I'm willing to go to jail for my constitutional rights. Are you? And this really leads into another one of the big questions that we have. Being on the internet provides you with a broader, more obscure audience, and that you're not just saying it to one person, that you're saying it to all of your followers, all of your friends, anyone that follows you on Instagram or Twitter. And it provides a different judgment because no one's seeing you, and like from the other video, no one knows what you look like or how you act. And another question that we came up with was, if you were to post it on one person's wall, is it completely different? Does it change the effect that it has? Or if you were just to post it on your own wall, what is the effect on other people?
Yeah, and then, but that kind of goes back to the idea that we are living in a country and in a place that is not fully developed to a point that we can handle technology. We do not have the rules surrounding technology. We don't have the laws that can govern technology properly. So it is much more complicated than it might seem. We don't know whether or not the Freedom of Speech Act is applied online as well, whether or not we can say what we want without being charged for threats. We saw Anthony Alanis was not able to do so, even though that the lyrics he said were from a rap. What makes it different that what Eminem said and what he said? And why is that Anthony Alanis was charged for, criminal intent when the other person was just, exercising the freedom of speech? So like what Julie said, if he said that stuff to one person, would he be charged for threatening someone? But then it comes back to the idea of the basics of freedom of speech, what the country thrives on, and it's the ability to protest and to make a point out of something. So by posting something online and on your own wall, is that analogous to holding up a billboard and a picket sign? And then again, does it make it okay that these were from the lyrics of a rap? And this just enhances the idea that the internet, technology, and social media in particular have truly complicated the way we can interpret the rules of the government. Are they all valid online as well? Do they all work on Twitter? Do they all work on Facebook? Are we able to exercise those rights even when we're not interacting with someone face to face?
والله هذا الرسالة يا ابو عالم الخير بالعالم خرب زانت والله اود دجيش دامتت راشتت مصيري واذايا اوباما بزانه والله دهنا امريكا والله دي سري تشليذكين والله المالة مالاس بي دي الويركن ولايتك ولايته بصلمانة والله الرسالة بو فرنسا وخشكاوي بلجيكا بلبزانت والله مزقين يزقين مهنقو والله دي السيارة الويرة بقين والله دي ويرة عبا بقينين والله دي ويرة سريتهم بلبقين أما والله بزانة يا مسعود الصا والله بزانة دي سري تشليذكين والله بزانة دي سري تشربين سقيفك والله بزانة أم ميرين وأم كسج ناترسين أم حكم الشريعة الطبقين وبزانة والله مصيرة إيك الجندي تاذيا هاتي صاروخ وتتهاذي والله بزانة دي سري جندي كتابو تهنرين تو بتشيكات كوجي تو مدنيا قصد كاي والله هذا الدستور انقودا تشتكي زوري مزنا ما تشرم خناك هذا.
So another good example of the use of social media changing our world is the ISIS video that you just saw. ISIS is using social media as a means of threat to the U.S. In the graph that Noah and I have found, it shows that in 2 hours, ISIS posts around 4 posts on Twitter. This has also led to the U.S. banning the Twitter accounts and closing them. What does this mean for us?
So does that mean that Twitter was too powerful of an entity and just gave ISIS way too much power? I mean, by providing ISIS with technology, it also provides them with significantly more power. It provides them with the largest audience in the world. And it also allows them to constantly infiltrate everyone's privacy. I am on my computer and you constantly see stuff about ISIS and how ISIS is threatening us. That threat is a direct threat to us.
Yeah, the use of technology is no longer just affecting the Middle East. We're now seeing it, Europe is now seeing it, everybody. It's always on our news feed, everyone's being affected by it.
But at what point did ISIS cross the line of freedom of speech and threats? What point did it surpass what Anthony Alanis did? And what point did they pass the opportunity of calling this just an expression of speech? Is it because they've threatened people in the past and have harmed people in the past, or is it because they have directly threatened a nation? And obviously it is a threat. I mean, it'd be wrong to categorize it as something less because it is very serious and should be taken as such. but it is not freedom of speech. And so, like, the question is, when did it become a threat? And is this just a more powerful threat because ISIS has the ability to constantly infiltrate and show up on our computer screens? I don't think that social media is a bad thing, but here it's definitely causing more of a harm than it does any justice.
Yeah, and do we need to fix our First Amendment? Does there need to be a clause that talks about the use of technology, especially in classrooms with cyberbullying and a lot of other things going on in the world today?
Yeah, I think the First Amendment is not adjusted to the idea that there are standards of language that you can use online that aren't acceptable and aren't an appropriate expression and exercise of the Freedom of Speech Act and the First Amendment.